At the beginning of this part, we are shown a scene of a branch of the heavenly demon divine cult. Here, Qian asks Nano to analyze the token that Hubong had brought along. After scanning the token, Nano informs that it is exactly the same as the Imperial Z token that Qian possesses. Upon hearing this, Qian begins to think to himself, "This identity token, this belongs to my grandfather, who disappeared 20 years ago." After this, Dark King is shown speaking to Qian. "You should be prepared for all possibilities in advance. This token seems completely genuine, but even so, it is highly suspicious." Qian starts thinking to himself, "All right then, let's go and take a look at it once." Following this, Dark King thinks to himself, "I was the only person who saw him before he left for the last time, but even he did not tell me anything about why he was going. The previous Supreme Heavenly Demon was already a very cunning man. Trusting that he handed his token to someone else just to get it delivered here is a little hard to believe." After this, everyone arrives in front of the room where that child had been seated. Just as Qian enters the room, two guards standing beside the child immediately greet Qian. The child, upon seeing Qian, starts thinking to himself, "Is this really the Demon Lord? But I cannot detect even a single trace of martial arts from him. He seems exactly like a person from a great noble family. So, are these people playing some kind of trick on me to test me? Risu." After that, he looks toward Shadow Master and begins thinking to himself, "But from this person I can sense an extremely powerful martial aura. So, is this the Dark King? If that's the case, then that means this very person must be the leader of the demon cult." Qian, showing the token, asks the child, "So, are you the one who brought this token here?" To this, the child also responds with a yes. Right after this, Wang He immediately says to the boy, "You kept saying that until the Demon Lord arrived before you, you wouldn't say anything to anyone. But now that he is in front of you, how can you just sit there without even greeting him?" After this, the boy immediately stands up and greets Qian, introducing himself by saying that he is Dan Bacon, the representative of the Northern Sea Ice Palace. As soon as Qian hears the name Northern Sea Ice Palace, he is slightly surprised. After this, the narrator explains, the three great eternal powers are martial arts organizations formed by ethnic groups outside the Central Plains. First is the Changbai faction, located in Mount Changbai to the east, known as the home of swordsmanship. Second is the Potala Palace, situated in the Tibetan Plateau to the west, originating from Yellow Buddhism and renowned for its internal martial arts, alongside Shaolin Temple. And lastly, the Northern Sea Ice Palace, located near Lake Baikal in the north, known for its gold-based martial arts ice technique. After this, Dark King is shown, thinking to himself, "The Northern Ice Palace came to seize control of the martial world 20 years ago, and within just a month, they waged war. I had heard that they had signed a peace agreement with the Orthodox Murim Alliance, but then, why are they here now?" Following this, Qian is shown, who says, "Are Traufendindawu a representative of the Northern Ice Palace?" Then, looking at the boy, he starts thinking to himself, "But he looks just like a beggar. His face is covered in wounds and his clothes are tattered." Dark King then speaks to the boy, "If you are a representative of the Ice Palace, then do you not have anything to prove that you are from there?" Hearing this, the boy says, "To tell you the truth, I am not actually the representative of the Ice Palace, but my uncle is." The boy becomes even more nervous and starts saying, "I don't know how to explain this to you." Then the boy continues, "But still, I can prove to you that I am from the Northern Ice Palace. If you remove my internal energy restriction, I will be able to demonstrate it. After this, it is done as he says, and the pressure points of the boy are released." The boy immediately picks up a cup of water in his hand and says, "Now watch this carefully." Seeing the cup, Hubong exclaims, "What?" It froze. Everyone is shocked upon seeing this. Qian thinks to himself, I could have shown them the ice martial artist, which is the symbol of the Northern Ice Palace, but I panicked, which only increased their suspicion. Then the boy notices that everyone is still staring at him. He thinks to himself, it seems they still don't fully trust me because I wasn't able to show them anything truly remarkable. But just then, Qian steps forward and, using his yin energy, places his hand on the table. Since Qian's yin and yang energy is already extremely powerful, with just a single motion, he uses his yin energy to completely freeze the entire table into ice. Seeing this, the boy is completely stunned and exclaims, the table froze completely in just 1 second. After that, Qian immediately lifts his hand from the table. The boy, who is already extremely shocked, starts speaking. Where did such an immense amount of internal yang energy come from? This is even faster than white divine art. After this, Qian is shown speaking to the boy. So, what do you have to say about this? Does using ice now make me a person from the Northern Ice Palace as well? As soon as the boy hears this, he was already extremely nervous, so he hesitates while trying to say something and stutters, then, where did so much yang energy come from within you? Hearing this, Qian responds, I don't think this is something that should be considered so important. Do you really think it's that difficult? After this, Hubong is shown, who speaks to Qian, Demon Lord, there is an even easier way to confirm everything from this person. Hearing this, the boy suddenly shouts loudly, Wait just a minute, listen to me, I'm sure you all know about this. Anyone who fully masters divine art within ice martial artists has their hair completely turn white. Looking at Qian, he continues, But your hair is still completely black. I still need to master it so that my hair turns white. If I push my chi to the 10th mastery level, my hair will start turning white, right? Qian immediately turns to Dark King and asks, What do you think about this? To this, Dark King replies to Qian that he himself is not sure about it either, but the head of the Darkness sect, Elder Huan, would definitely know about this. However, he is currently deep inside 10,000 mountains. After that, Dark King says, But Wang Jin will surely know about this. He was supposed to become part of the Orthodox Murim Alliance 30 years ago. Cheon immediately calls out to Hubong and commands, Quickly bring Wang Jin here. As soon as the boy hears the name Wang Jin, he becomes extremely anxious and thinks to himself, Are they talking about unrivaled sword Wang Jin? I had heard that he joined the demon cult. So, is that actually true? Looking at Qian, he thinks to himself, 2 of the 5 great martial artists of the Central Plains are inside the demon cult, so it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the demon cult has complete authority over them. After this, Qian says to the boy, Stop being so surprised and hurry up and do something to prove your identity. After this, the scene shows that the boy immediately brings his hands together and starts doing something while thinking to himself, I never learned ice divine art for things like this, but this is the only way I can prove who I really am. As soon as Wang He looks at the boy, he is also extremely shocked. After that, the boy's hair, which was black until now, slowly starts turning white. Seeing this, Sangwa also starts thinking to herself, he was telling the truth. After this, Qian also says, Interesting. I don't know what kind of internal technique this is, causing his aura to flow like this. But this is truly quite fascinating. Then the boy completes his transformation and slowly returns to normal. Someone speaks to Qian, Did you see that? Hearing this, Qian starts thinking. As soon as the boy looks at Qian, he starts thinking to himself, The atmosphere here has slightly changed. If unrivaled sword Wang Jin helps me in this matter, then I can seek help from the demon cult leader. The most important thing is that I have the previous cult leader's token. Just then, Hubong's voice comes from outside. Demon Lord, I have brought Wang Jin here. The boy immediately looks forward and thinks to himself, I have been hearing about him since my childhood, so I am finally going to meet him face to face. As soon as his gaze shifts forward, He looked slightly shocked. Wang Jin had arrived, but along with him there was also a young lady present at the place. As soon as Dan Baekhyun looks at the young lady, he starts thinking to himself, this energy which is coming from this girl, she has also mastered ice martial art. Moreover, her hair has completely turned white. Just how terrifying an ice martial art has she mastered? This can't be. I can't believe that someone with even more Yan energy than me is standing in front of me. I have no way to explain myself to these people. After this, he starts crying and says, what kind of martial art has this girl mastered that has turned her hair completely white? Then, the scene changes to show the main base of the Orthodox Murim Alliance. There, we see a man sitting on a chair. This is Dan Juseong, who is thinking to himself, something bad has always happened in Tonghi country's garrison town. This is a major blow to the Orthodox Murim Alliance, because they have also suffered heavy losses. It is possible that due to this, we may not be able to receive their assistance. It has already been nearly 2 hours since I sent my message from here. I am already in a great hurry. It would be best if they respond as soon as possible. After this, the scene shifts to the conference area of the Orthodox Murim Alliance, where the leader of the beggar sect is speaking. Even if we are in contact with Northern Ice Palace and have already formed an alliance with them, this situation remains extremely dangerous. Another person nods in agreement and says, I also agree with this, but why was such a terrifying monster sealed inside Northern Ice Palace? Even after hearing this, the head of the Murim Alliance remains completely silent. Seeing him remain quiet, the leader of the beggar sect shouts, you cannot simply ignore the gravity of this situation. Dragon Tortoise is one of the greatest disasters to ever threaten humanity. This is not something that can be taken lightly. And with this, this episode comes to an end. See you soon in the next part. Now, at the beginning of the story, we are introduced to the 5 spirit beasts, the Great Peng, the Emoji, the Wind White Tiger, the Fire Kylin, and lastly, the Dragon Turtle. These 5 mythical creatures, also known as the 5 secret beings, include the Dragon Turtle, a legendary creature with a head like a dragon and a body like a tortoise. Merchants used to worship the Dragon Turtle, but it was nothing like what was expected. Nin. At this moment, 7th Master Mo Yong Kang speaks and says, you all should know that the Yong clan has ties to the Jin dynasty. The 3-headed dragon turtle first appeared suddenly during the Jin dynasty and destroyed the entire 5-province kingdom. More than thousands of civilians were killed. Or, we were only able to stop the dragon turtle because we had the support of the armies of Jiang Hu and countless martial artists from the forces of justice. Otherwise, this creature would not have been called a disaster. Well, at this time, the situation of the forces of justice is very dire, and that is why we cannot help the Northern Ice Palace. Hearing this, a monk sitting there starts speaking. If we do not help them, then the Ice Palace will be completely wiped out from this earth. We are all allies. If we ignore their call and do not go to help them, then how will others see us? Upon hearing this, Gakyeon says, but just then a voice comes from the other side. I completely agree with the head monk. The one who says this is Jokyung, the 14th master of the Chonggong sect. He continues, our forces of justice have always upheld justice. If we do not help the Northern Ice Palace, then everyone will turn against us. Hearing this, Gakyeon says, yes, you are absolutely right. Upon hearing this, the leader of the beggar sect says, so, you are talking about justice? Fine, but do not forget that we are Orthodox martial artists. The supreme sects, demonic cults, and unorthodox sects are rapidly increasing their strength. If we suffer more losses, then who will protect Jiang Yuan? Jokyung says, if we are to help them, we must ensure that our losses are minimal. The sect leader responds, did you hear what Mo Yong Kang said? Do you understand how dangerous the dragon turtle is? It single-handedly destroyed the 5 provinces. Do you still not realize how incredibly dangerous it is? At that moment, someone else says, we should be grateful that this creature appeared near the sea and not in Zhao Yuan. Yes. Meanwhile, the head of the forces of justice silently listens to everything. He thinks to himself, both sides are only focusing on one thing, making sure the alliance does not suffer any loss in the future. But the most concerning thing is that the dragon turtle was freed because of the explosives borrowed by Cheon. Oh, really? Just then, his attention shifts to a person sitting in front of him. He asks, "What are your thoughts on this matter?" This person is the second son of the alliance head, Kang Soa. He is carefully examining the letter. Seeing him, the alliance head starts thinking, as time passes, this boy is becoming more and more dangerous, but he is just as talented as his elder brother. The alliance head recalls an old memory. In a past scene, Kang Soa is seen saying, "We must uproot these unorthodox demonic cults from their very roots." The alliance head, in his mind, thinks, since childhood, his bloodthirst has been exceedingly strong. Among my 3 sons, he is the most ambitious. That is why I have always kept him away from the successor's position. After this, a boy is shown trembling uncontrollably, and while shaking, he stammers, "Monster. He is completely a monster." And from behind, the alliance head, whose name is Mok, is seen watching him. In the present scene, this boy, who was trembling, turns out to be the alliance head Mok's eldest son, Yeon Busho. The alliance head, thinking about him, says to himself, Yeon Busho arrived here nearly 2 weeks ago, yet he has still not mentally recovered. Though I allow him to sit in such meetings, I have no idea what the consequences of this will be. After this, Kang Soa suddenly stands up and speaks to everyone present, including the alliance head and all the masters gathered there. "I want to ask for help from all of you. I want to ask something from the representative of the Northern Ice Palace. Can I summon him here for a while?" Hearing this, Mo Yong-kang says, "However, we have not yet reached any conclusion." Kang Soa, hearing this, replies, "This is a very important matter, and it will determine whether we should help the Northern Ice Palace or not." After this, Dan Jushian, who is the representative of the Northern Ice Palace, is called to that place. Seeing all the people present, Jushian thinks to himself, have they reached a decision or not? After that, Kang Soa picks up Dan Jushian's letter and says, "I want to ask you a question. I read in this letter that a divine relic was discovered there, for which the ice stones were shattered. Well, even though the dragon turtle is still alive, as soon as this matter is brought up, Dan Jushin responds, I had already said that this matter is extremely important, yet they have not reached any decision until now." Or, after this, he looks at the rest of the people and says, "The dragon turtle had been sealed within the ice stone for hundreds of years. I thought that this would be the perfect time to destroy it." Kang Soa steps forward and asks, "So that's the case? Well, no problem." However, in his mind, he is thinking, "I don't know why, but it feels like I am being interrogated." Then Kang Soa continues, "But the letter further states that all of this happened because of the explosives brought by Zhongyuan." Why? Dan Jushian, agreeing to this, says, "Yes, you are absolutely right." Kang Soa further adds, "But nowhere in this letter is it mentioned where exactly all these explosives came from." Hearing this, Dan Jushian is slightly taken aback and asks, "Why are you asking about this?" Innocent, Kang Soa responds, "These explosives must have been extremely powerful if they were enough to completely destroy the place where the dragon turtle was imprisoned." Then, looking at the letter, he says, "It is written here that such an explosive was found inside Zhongyuan." Dan Jushian once again affirms, "Yes, you are absolutely right." Kang Soa moves forward and says, "But such a powerful explosive should be somewhat similar to true heavenly lightning." Then, becoming serious, he continues, "Inside the Imperial Palace it is stored, but outside the palace it is completely prohibited. Even our Murim alliance, which is very close to the Imperial Palace, cannot obtain it so easily." As soon as everyone hears this, they become deeply concerned. The head of the Murim alliance thinks to himself, "During the signing of the non-aggression treaty, there were a vast number of true heavenly lightning explosives present there. This matter is troubling me a lot." After this, Dan Jushin is shown who appears completely calm. Taking a deep breath, he says, "I did not want to talk about this matter because it is related to the internal conflict of the Imperial Palace, but now you have left me with no other choice." Then, becoming serious, he states, "If I am to be honest, we received all these explosives from an unknown group within Zhongyuan. In fact, we obtained these explosives in this manner." Kang Soa asks about this group. What organization was it? Dan Zhu Cheon, refusing to answer, says, "We do not know anything about them." Kang Soa immediately questions, "What do you mean by saying that you do not know anything about them?" Dan Zhu Cheon explains, "We only heard that the organization was part of a secret sect in Zhongyuan. Their connection with the Ice Palace elders was quite old." Then, in a serious tone, he adds, "They said they could not reveal their identity because explosives were completely prohibited inside Cheonyan." Hearing this, Kang Soha becomes furious and says, "So you're saying that all your elders outright refused to tell you who those people were?" Then, speaking gravely, he adds, "If that's the case, then this situation could become even more complicated." Dan Jushian responds with a heavy heart, "Nothing can be done now, as those elders are no longer with us." Taking a deep breath, he continues, "The palace master and the other elders perished, buried under the ice where the dragon turtle was sealed." The Alliance head, upon hearing this, says, "So that's why the seal on the letter is not from the Ice Palace Master, but from Frangxi." Then, in a serious tone, he says, "This is truly dreadful news." The Alliance head then looks at Dan Juxian and says, "I am deeply saddened to hear this." Dan Juxian replies, "Although I appreciate your sympathies, the Palace Master's death was no accident." Hearing this, the Murim Alliance head is completely taken aback and asks, "What do you mean?" Dan Jushan remains silent, reaches into his pocket, takes something out, and places it on the table. Kang Soha picks it up and says, "This is..." Then we are shown a cloth covered in numerous sword marks. To you. Kang Soha, unable to comprehend, wonders, "What exactly is this?" The Murim Alliance head, upon seeing it, begins trembling in fear and suddenly stands up, exclaiming, "These are blade marks!" Dan Jushian says seriously, "I tried my best to replicate those markings. These are the exact same marks that were on that child's body." Then, in a deep voice, he adds, "That child was the sole survivor who managed to escape from that place." Hearing this, the Murim Alliance head begins sweating profusely and thinks to himself, "This must be the work of the Six Martial Arts sect." The scene then shifts, showing the demon cult, where Dan Baikyun is seen standing after removing his clothes. His body is covered in numerous scars, which Cheon and the Dark King observe intently. As Dan Baikyun puts his clothes back on, he asks Cheon, "Did you recognize these marks?" The Dark King immediately responds, "These are the marks of the Six Martial Arts sect's Supreme Saber Divine Martial Art." Hearing this, Dan Baikyun begins thinking, "The Six Martial Arts sect? Isn't that the same sect that suddenly emerged recently? The martial art technique that almost killed me. Was it theirs?" Along with Dan Baikyun, Cheon is also closely examining the marks and says, "So those people have reached even the Northern Sea Ice Palace." Cheon then asks Dan Baikyun, "You mentioned that your third elder had invited them?" Dan Baikyun replies, "Yes, they said that those who worked with explosives in Zhongyuan knew them." The Northern Sea Ice Palace had a divine relic that had been missing for a long time. This divine relic was passed down from generation to generation to the palace master. However, hundreds of years ago, during the attempt to defeat the dragon turtle, the Ice Palace Master and many warriors sacrificed themselves. They were all buried inside the icy cave. Since there had been no activity for centuries, everyone assumed that the mythical beast had died by now. The Palace Master, along with the third and fourth elders and other elite warriors of the Northern Sea Ice Palace, used explosives to open the cave entrance. A group from the Six Martial Arts sect also wanted to accompany them, and since the third elder vouched for them, No one suspected anything. They entered the cave and discovered the frozen dragon turtle. That's when everything changed. The 6 martial arts sect members suddenly revealed their true intentions and launched an attack. The Ice Palace warriors, renowned for their bravery, resisted with all their might. But something happened that no one could have foreseen. The 3rd elder, whom they had trusted the most, stabbed the palace master in the back. And with that, this episode comes to an end.